Good evening, Hampstead. Welcome to September 26, 2023 regular meeting at approximately 7:06 p.m. Melissa, would you mind taking the roll call?
Absolutely. Jason Giard?
Here.
Aaron Pellegrini? Mrs. Pellegrini is absent. David Smith?
Here.
Andy Cabarrus?
Here.
Carl Hubner?
Here.
And Pinkerton Student Liaison Shannon Patel?
Here.
Thank you. And also seated at the board table is Superintendent of Schools Bob Thompson and CFO Jeff Dowd.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. If we can stand for the pledge, please. Mr. Cabarrus, you want to lead us?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you, everyone. All right. Board members, in your packets, you have 3 sets of meeting minutes. You've got the September 12th regular meeting, September 12th non-public, and then the September 21st public hearing on the special meeting. I want to take a moment to take a review, and then I'll be looking for a vote. I'll go ahead and make motion to accept the meeting minutes from September 12th regular meeting, September 12th non-public, and the September 21st public hearing on special meeting. Right. For discussion, the only thing I wanted to bring up is in the non-public, for those that weren't able to tune back in at the end, and something we definitely want to celebrate and re-announce or announce again on Echo, that we did approve an extension and really a new contract for Mr. Thompson after 2.5 years of doing what we all feel, and a lot of community feedback, a really phenomenal job. We thought it was prudent in the final year to extend his contract through to June of 2028. And I'll just say, again, as we said in our public, really great job of what happened over the last 2.5 years and getting us through some challenges. Still a lot of work to do. We've talked about there's a lot of room for improvement and helping the kids out, students out. But looking forward to the plans you put in place, your team that's been put in place, the teachers, the aides, the staff that's all here to support you and the district. So definitely appreciate it, and glad we were able to come to an agreement. Anyone else? All right. And all approved?
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Let's get this on. All right. Next, we have public comments. And we have one person doing public comments tonight. So, Mr. Elliott, if you want to come to the podium, again, now your name, your address. You got about 3 minutes.
Thank you, board members, staff. Mark Elliott, 15 Hastings Drive here in Hempstead. I want to address the data governance plan. I spoke in front of this board a year and 4 or 5 months ago about the plan and the staff's lack of compliance with that plan. And the board gave the staff a directive to present a plan to the board within 6 months outlining becoming in compliance with that plan. That never happened. We came up a year later to renew the plan, and it's essentially the same plan that the staff really isn't going to comply with. There are a lot of security holes in this. If I look at the password requirements, for example, there's a lot of vagueness in considering the district did not comply with the password requirements for the first 3 years of the data governance plan. The staff rolled out a call for a lack of detail and a lack of ability to track to comply with or to be able to document compliance with the plan. And I already talked to my student, and the password requirements are laughable at best. To protect the security of the password system, I won't share those details, but I encourage the staff or the board to talk to their students and find out exactly what their passwords are, because it puts us at significant risk. We're not in compliance today, and I don't see a plan or a path to get in compliance with this plan or the state and federal laws that govern this. So I urge the board to go back and direct the staff to develop a true plan in compliance. And I volunteered myself to provide support back in June, and nobody called until September, and Mr. Smith offered the board's participation, and unfortunately there was never any confirmation that the board was going to attend the one meeting that was scheduled a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. And unfortunately I had to cancel, which I was disappointed, but I think we owe our students in the community a lot better than this plan provides. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next, we're going to go on to school highlights. So Dr. Cheney for the HCS highlights.
Hi there. I have just a brief update for you folks today, as I was here just a couple of weeks ago. Our enrollment has pretty much stabilized at this point in the year. We're right at 470 students at the Central School. We're looking forward to our first early release day tomorrow. That's not on my board report, but I want to make sure that I do mention that there is an abbreviated schedule tomorrow with a 2:00 dismissal for any families that are listening. And if there are any questions, please feel free to reach out. But in these last couple of weeks, our school has celebrated Dot Day. Some of our first grade classes have taken on this idea of Dot Day, which was inspired by a book called The Dot. And it really does celebrate the idea of uniqueness and finding your place and making your mark in the world. And so our first graders spend some time at the beginning of September making their mark on HCS and decorating our hallways in that fashion. Our fall assessments have begun. Students have started their iReady and DIBELS testing. This is going to give us a great benchmark, so that way we can measure their academic growth and progress throughout the year. Parents will be getting these reports a little bit later on in the fall once the assessment window closes. And we're looking forward to seeing where our students currently are and how far we can take them this year. Additionally, our new curriculum, the Wonders Literacy Curriculum, has arrived in classrooms. Teachers are starting to unpack the materials, and we're looking forward to October 6th, learning more about these materials and how we can utilize them to best support our growing readers. Additionally, we've just received a furniture delivery. At budget time last year, we discussed a 5-year replacement cycle for classroom furniture, and our first graders were delivered brand new desks over the last week, and they are very excited about that. Our book vending machine that we talked about last year has taken on a new flavor this year. We've tied it to our multi-tiered systems of support with behavior program. And students in the month of September have been working really hard on the idea of including others. They're inviting new friends to sit with them at lunch. They're asking kiddos that might not have a friend to play with on the playground to play with them. And teachers and staff are noticing this. And at the end of the month, each teacher will nominate a couple of students from their classroom. And these students will be recognized for their work in including others in the HCS community. Each month, there will be a different theme, and I look forward to sharing more about that throughout the year. Are there any questions?
Yeah, so the fall assessment. Can you speak a little bit more what the parents should be expecting to see as far as, is that going to be via the email? Is that going to be, something sent back in their paperwork?
Yeah, so those will be mailed via hard copy.
Okay.
We don't have the system yet to email each individual parent, but we will be able to print those out and send those hard copy. They'll get a copy of their DIBELS report, which is a literacy assessment about early literacy skills, as well as 2 iReady reports, one for reading and one for mathematics.
Okay. And I'm assuming this is, Mr. Thompson, what we'll see here presented in October of how we've done as a district from previous years?
Yes. So Mrs. Tomaselli will do a student achievement data presentation in October after the fall assessments have been administered, and then we'll have the spring results for the entire state of New Hampshire that we can present on as well.
Okay. Can you speak about the new curriculum? Because I think that's something that's worth mentioning here.
Yeah.
This is new to everybody. Can you explain how we chose this,
Yeah.
the process, and then what's happening now?
Absolutely. So last year across the district, our literacy teams were involved in a study. So at the central school, the ELA team, English Language Arts team, reviewed multiple curriculums, and then they chose 2 to try out. We had a teacher at each grade level pilot these new programs. They did one for 3 months and then the next one for the next 3 months. At the end of that, they utilized a rubric to find the strengths and challenges of each of those 2 programs before finally settling on the Wonders curriculum. The benefit to the Wonders curriculum is it really is a comprehensive program. It integrates writing, spelling, word study, all the pieces you need to make a well-rounded reader.
Okay. What do we have before?
We had journeys.
Okay. And this is can you compare the two? Why this over journeys?
Yeah, so we did look at the new Journeys curriculum as well. It just wasn't as robust as this Wonders piece was. Like I said, this integrates the writing piece pretty efficiently, as well as that spelling piece. And as we're continuing to grow our knowledge in the science of reading, we have several teachers who are what's called letters trained, which is a movement through the state of New Hampshire in the science of reading. And the Wonders curriculum aligned neatly with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you speak to how that gets implemented school-wide? Is it one person, or is it during professional development days? How does this get rolled out just as a program overall?
Yeah, so last year our pilot team spent a lot of time in professional development, and they're supporting each of their grade levels as a colleague and as somebody who's been immersed in the curriculum a little bit. Now they're still learning as well, so I want to be sure that we're aware that this is new for everybody. And then we do have on October 6th, we have somebody from the Wonders publishers, that's the word I'm looking for, coming to support that professional development from the publisher's point of view.
Great.
In addition, there are lots of videos and webinars and things of that nature to utilize online.
Just out of curiosity.
She wants me to say the spring training, but I don't know. They got a spring train. Thank you.
All right.
She's bringing me back to last year.
Okay.
Yes.
As far as from the state, is there a curriculum that the Department of Education typically will sponsor or suggest?
No.
So each district is up to their own device of sorts.
Correct.
Okay.
The state of New Hampshire, however, is supportive of the letters training, which is not a program. It is a professional development for staff in the science of reading. And the state has supported that at a fairly high level over the last year. And not only did we have teachers trained before this, but we have several that are either retraining or training for the first time.
Okay.
And I think it's important to note too that, some of the vocabulary is important here. So when we talk about standards, so what the state does is the state does have standards for all subject areas, and they're constantly under review. Those standards that are published on the Department of Education website then translate into the curriculum that the district develops. And then that curriculum, we will purchase materials to support the implementation of the curriculum.
Right.
And so those, a lot of the work that's being done right now isn't necessarily a new curriculum. It is it's new materials to be able to support the curriculum. So if you go onto the district's website and you look at the English Language Arts curriculum, you'll see that there's been some revisions, but there's no wholesale redoing of the curriculum. This is a new program to support the implementation of the curriculum that is already established.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Dr. Cheney. And up next, Ms. Caffell with the Pinkerton update.
All right, so we had a very successful MacPlac weekend and Spirit Week as we took down Londonderry 7-1. We even won the football game, which is something I have not seen the last 4 years of high school. So we broke that losing streak. On Friday, we ended our Spirit Week with our pep rally. It's truly an experience unlike anything else. This year I had the honor of dancing with the dance club in the pep rally. And it's just so amazing to see the support from the school, even for the arts. And that's a really awesome thing about Pinkerton. They support everyone and everything that we do. During Spirit Week, Dr. Powers and Mr. Perez cooked up hot dogs for the senior class for Grill Dad versus Soccer Mom Day. That was very interesting. They were very good. Saturday was our homecoming dance. Tickets sold out in 2 days. Blows my mind every time. I didn't go, but I was at Billy Joel, which was pretty awesome. Wednesday's an early release day, so teachers can prepare for open house. There are 2 sessions, 1 to 3 and 5 to 7. Parents can walk through their children's schedules, see the campus, and meet their teachers. Thursday night is the freshman reception dance. Saturday is our rescheduled corn roast date. And we had the ceremonial groundbreaking on the new building. And I think that's all I have for this week.
All right. Any questions, Shannon? All right. Thank you, Shannon. All right. We're going to move on to current business. And up first, we have Superintendent Thompson and Mr. Dion talk about cybersecurity.
Good evening, everyone. On April 26, 2023, Hsd School District had a cybersecurity audit conducted by the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, otherwise known as CISA. This audit consisted of going over our internal policies, our physical and logical infrastructure, and a walkthrough of each site, inspecting our data closets. During this audit, our team and CISA developed an action plan. This action plan has 3 stages. It starts with the review process, items that need to be discussed to decide implementation, viability, and if the cost-benefit relationship makes sense. To resolve, items that are already in the process of being solved, and to maintain, items that have been resolved and are part of our ongoing routine to keep up to date if necessary. A lot of this audit that was conducted is confidential for our internal security to keep us safe, but there are some things that I'd like to talk about. Some of the changes made right here are the emails are no longer visible on the district website to reduce phishing attacks. They can no longer be scrubbed with a bot to collect that data to then be used as an attack against us. We also received 250 YubiKeys, which are basically security tokens. I applied for a grant from the local government, and they were able to give us these. They're worth around $50 a piece, so our district got a saving of $12,500. And it helps in our MFA initiative. MFA stands for multi-factor authentication, and that pretty much stands for something you know, like a password, something you have, like a phone or a YubiKey security token, and something that you are, like a face for facial recognition or a fingerprint. We also remove sensitive portals from like our time clock and budget system from our public website. It was recommended by CISA to remove the data governance plan from our public facing website so attackers can't use that to access and understand our environment. We have improved and enhanced infrastructure logging to help detect anomalies and potentially malicious activity within our network. We went from roughly around 30 days to 3 months of logging in all of our appliances so we can backdate and look at data in real time. We also updated our security and firewall architecture in all of our buildings to provide high availability and failover to help ensure students and staff can stay connected in the events of a firewall fail. This is down to the port level. If we have any kind of hardware failure, we have another device ready to go to pick up the slack and make sure that the students and the staff are continuing to teach and learn. For future technology projects and budget implications, we are coming up on a core infrastructure overhaul. That's going to be to replace and update the internal hosts, switches, and storage, all the devices in our infrastructure. That has to do with the fact that our current infrastructure is starting to reach end of life. Once it becomes end of life, we can no longer get updates and protect everyone with security. This will be a priority in our technology operating budget for 24-25. Next up will be cybersecurity tabletop exercises. We're going to have some exercises provided by Primex and CISA for our administrative team. And we're also going to have an internal tabletop plan for early October with our technology department and the administrative team. We also have future security audits planned. These will be needed to be budgeted in the future. And the physical security audit is to be conducted on a 3-year cycle and as needed. Any questions?
And if I could just add that, there are several components to the cybersecurity audit that should not be discussed in public. So if there were specific areas that the board wanted more information on, that would warrant a non-public session.
Yeah, I think that for our next meeting, we should be talking about having that, and Aaron's here. We can make sure that, we're all defined.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that would be good to know, I know that there's been a few school districts that have had good fraud, but, different cybersecurity threats that actually happen.
Yes.
To know what we're doing and to all this prepare. What do we need to look at for funding for next year?
Mm-hmm.
That we can support even more. Again, I know someone here who was, part of what happened in Nashua, which was, ungodly thing in the year.
Right.
Things like that, we talk about non-public to make sure that.
Sounds good.
I had a question, and this may not be something for public. Is there a difference in the amount of damage somebody could do if they got a hold of a student password versus a teacher password? Like, are the student accounts limited in comparison to the teacher accounts?
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah. So if a
I can't
student...
go into detail, but yes.
Okay. Yeah. We don't have to go into detail. Sorry.
And I would just like to add, after the cyber attack in Nashua, I had an opportunity to speak with the superintendent who walked me through sort of the series of events that occurred in the district's response. And it was frightening to understand that the people who are orchestrating these attacks are highly sophisticated criminal organizations in other countries. And just to give you one quick example with the particular attack in Nashua, they actually have these cyber attackers have a customer service line where the district is able to call customer service to have a conversation about the specific attack and what the steps the district needs to do to pay the ransom amount. These are very sophisticated operations that we're dealing with. And it does give me, Joe's response to the cybersecurity issues that the district is facing is very commendable. And I can tell you, he and his team, they don't wait for an attack to occur. Last year, Joe was adamant that all of our administrative team is trained in cybersecurity. We brought Primex on site. He's gone to multiple staff meetings to talk about cybersecurity. And now that he has a full team, the department can be more proactive in their response. Because I can tell you, even the number of phishing emails the district receives, trying to get sensitive information is very concerning. And it's so concerning that the federal government is now allocating greater resources to states to be able to combat cybersecurity. So this is an issue that we should continue to talk about. And I think we'd welcome the opportunity to have a discussion in non-public if there were specific areas that the board would like to have some more information on.
Yeah, I think it's just, when you look at I don't know if anybody's seen what happened in Peterborough a few years ago. It was like 2 point something million or 3 point something million dollars was transferred to I'm going to say somebody from an employee. They thought they were doing what they're supposed to do. So that's why the training is good to hear that. I think those are things that we want to hear in non-public. It's not just what are we putting up in for, let's say, application software, but also the training. Because that's the weakest place, either in my company with what I do, the weakest link is always to get to somebody.
Yes.
So I think that's really what we want to hone in on when we talk in non-public.
Sounds good.
Beyond that, I think just even whether it comes from a superintendent update to the district or something like that, but if we can publicize the do's and don'ts or what the public can do to assist us in the name of cybersecurity, I think, laying it out as clearly as possible, as easy to understand as possible for our parents and anyone else of what they can do to help us, I think would be a great idea.
I think, there certainly is a component of parent education that needs to occur, because, we learned in one of the trainings that Primex did that, confidential information is sold on the dark web, and school records sell for a premium compared to other types of confidential records. So these groups are specifically targeting our students' information. I do think that it is helpful that many of these attacks are occurring with school districts that locally host their information. Right. We don't locally host a lot of information. It's cloud-based through PowerSchool and other programs as well. And that has actually been helpful for us. So.
Yep, that makes sense. All right. Any other questions for Joe?
Things that Nashua did was they switched over to cloud-based.
Yeah.
So that if there's the hack, what they can do is they just can go back and reset the system to before the hack. And then even if they get some sort of access that they can reset it, and it makes it a lot easier with less interruption. So that's really good that we're doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe if you talk 15, 20 years ago, these were scare tactics to buy things, but now it's like you're seeing where they're happening. So it's good that we're investing in these. We have the right control. So again, thanks, Joe, and looking forward to the next meeting with you.
Me too. Thank you.
All right, Joe, you're going to stay up here. So,
Yes.
So you and Mrs. Tomaselli to talk about the data governance plan.
Thank you. No, thank you for having us. So we're here tonight to present the data governance plan. This plan was presented, as Mr. Elliott said earlier, back in June. The board did not approve it at that time, which actually has turned out to be a wonderful thing because we received the findings of the cybersecurity audit in the meantime, and we're able to go back and make a handful more edits using their guidance. So I wanted to take some time tonight to point out some of those edits are minor and some are more substantive. So I wanted to point out some of the bigger ones, and we'll go kind of page by page. So I think you all have a copy of it in your packet. It is important to note that this document is limited release. So we will not be publishing it on our website. But we have had a conversation with the superintendent, and he is open to the idea of having a parent-friendly, discoverable version available if we need to. And I like the ideas and suggestions of do's and don'ts. And, of course, our teachers, we're all learning here together. So do's and don'ts for teachers, do's and don'ts for families. I think that's a great idea, Andy. So we'll start right in with the revisions. I'm going to draw your attention to page 14. We did institute a process when Joe became the director last year, and I came to the district 2 years ago. We instituted a process by which teachers must request approval before they use software with any class or students. So we call this the request to use form. The edit here is that the data governance team will properly vet the resource to ensure it meets the district's business objectives and is in line with curriculum or behavioral standards, is age appropriate, is instructionally sound, and is appropriate for the intended use in accordance with our student data privacy consortium. So these aren't decisions we make on our own. We are members of a data privacy consortium that's nationally recognized, and all of the software that is used in our classes and used by students is vetted through this process. We are reminding teachers annually and at staff meetings that all software must be approved in this way, and using some of our management tools to restrict access to tools that we know are a risk.
And I know this was a bone of contention in the past, and we've talked about this quite a few times about, teacher staff utilizing sites that are not approved. So can you speak a little bit about, I don't want to say punishment, but more of like what happens when a teacher does not go through this? What is the repercussions, or what happens?
Yeah, well, we ask that parents, if there is a specific concern, bring it to the attention of the teacher. Sometimes these are just errors of omission where, there was a link included in a Google Classroom that they created 2 years ago. I find that most of the infractions that we're discovering are really just that, not done with any intent. Obviously, if teachers continue to do that, then, we would use a progressive discipline problem to, process to address that. But I think it's really the piece that is most important is that if a parent is aware of an issue, they raise that issue with the teacher and the administrator as well, but in real time so that they can make a correction to their, it is something that we're constantly trying to enforce. And it's difficult to do when you just think about the vastness of the internet.
Are we cataloging this? And I'm not saying catalog for each teacher, but catalog the offenses throughout the year so we can know how many offenses have been done?
Yes, but I would say that is generally true of any time that we have it to address an issue with a teacher. There is a well-defined process that we use that is identified even in our collective bargaining agreements that documents in writing concerns that we have about teachers, and that would include violation of the data governance plan.
Okay. So I just think that in the last discussion we just had on cybersecurity, that some of this vetting is also making sure we're not using, say, sites that have phishing, malware, et cetera. So I think it's even more important that we're abiding by this and cataloging so we can have that corrective action.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to be clear though that that first line of defense with the parent having the conversation with the teacher, sometimes these things are well-intended oversights. Multiplication.com is a good example of a site that for a long time was not an approved site. And teachers will use that. It really sometimes is just the conversation. It does not have to go down the disciplinary route. Can it? It absolutely can. But we do have to put faith and trust in our professionals that they have the ability to vet the websites they're using. And every once in a while, we'll have an issue that we need to address. The first stop on that is not necessarily discipline.
No, I'm not thinking it's the first stop, but it's how do we monitor that, okay, didn't mean to move on, but if it's repeated.
Yeah. And absolutely, we would do that.
All right.
I'd like to add to that I can give you an example of a tool that we discovered was not approved by SDPC. It's called Epic Books. This has been a tool that's been used by teachers for years. It's online books. And once we realized it wasn't approved, that's a little heartbreaking for teachers because it allows kids to read and it saves their spot, and then they can pick up their Chromebook and read again. And it's hard to imagine that a site like that wouldn't be approved, but if they are not going to comply with COPA, SIPA, FERPA, then we're not going to authorize it. So we ended up coming to terms with the librarians with a workaround so that we can find other curriculum products to supplement. So that's really where the work begins. So it starts with a conversation about it's not approved, you can't use it.
Right.
We determine whether it was intentional or accidental, and then here's the replacement tool that is approved. But this work is ongoing, and these recommendations are annual. So we have to reauthorize all these Exhibit E's annually.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think your battery's dead.
I'll start over.
Yeah.
if we find a teacher that's using a site that's not approved and we communicate with that teacher, we can't use the site, blah, blah, blah. Are we also communicating with the rest of our staff to say we shouldn't be using this site? I'm sure teachers are networking with one another. They're bringing ideas from other school districts and they're saying, hey, try the site out. Are we communicating that with everyone to make sure that it's not spreading?
So let me back up by saying the process is if you communicate with teachers outside of the district and you get good ideas, you have to get them approved by our process before you use them.
And I get
We've
that.
been kind of hammering that into staff for a while now. When we do deny a tool, it does get listed on our SDPC site and the reason for denial is posted, but I personally reply back to the person who requested it and I usually copy the principal so it can be a conversation at the department level. And if it's a site that I know is popular and it is common for teachers to use it, I will address multiple people in the email to make sure that people know we're no longer allowed to use that site.
And I think part of the challenge too is when, we recently got an email that indicated that there were a number of sites that were being used by teachers, but we weren't provided with who those teachers were. So there was a lot of investigatory process that went into trying to identify who those teachers are. And again, that's why that piece of that first line of communication between the parent and the teacher is really critical. And we'll have teachers that will come to us and say, I had a parent reach out about the use of the site. I just want to make you aware. I have not encountered a teacher who was knowingly and willingly violating our data governance plan, knowing that they shouldn't use a website. Again, it oftentimes is an oversight. And think about why that oversight exists. Because they're teachers. They're trying to provide the best level of instruction to their students. That is the first thing that they think about. We just need to continually remind them about the parameters in which they provide that instruction to kids. It's an added layer. It's a necessary one to protect the privacy of our students. And our teachers are doing the best job that they can. And we need to continually enforce that and remind them about that.
This may sound like a dumb or an overly simplified question, but is the software request for use form electronic or is it a paper form that people fill out?
It's a Google form.
It's a Google Doc. Okay. I want to make sure that it's electronic and that, the process is as simplified and streamlined as, as easy to use for the teachers as possible. So that's great.
There probably are some improvements we could make along those lines, Andy, where right now we ask what grade it's being used in, and it's not uncommon for us to get a request for the same product in multiple grades. So we have points of contact in each grade level team where we try to encourage the teams to go through one team leader so that the requests aren't duplicated.
And I also think, Andy, to be transparent, it's not simple. And that is not a knock on the work that anyone is doing. But, in order to use a website, to have to fill out a form, to have that form go to committee for review, to have that committee go through and review all of the privacy statements, to go to these consortiums to determine if the website is used, there's nothing simple about the process. It is necessary and we will do it. But if you were to ask our teachers about that process, they would tell you that it's very cumbersome. And at times it presents a roadblock to some of the things that they'd like to do in the classroom, because even with the most efficient process, if the data governance team were to meet once a week, it still could take a week from the time you find that wonderful website on a Friday night to the time that it actually gets approved for use. That it could be a week or two.
Like you said, benefits and drawbacks to both.
Yeah.
With that. We're doing our due diligence in vetting that site, and that takes time.
And the list gets bigger, which is great, right? So, if you look at the number of software applications and websites that are on there now compared to when, 2021, it is expanded exponentially. So that is a helpful component of the process.
All right. Thank you.
So our next update you'll find on page 18. It's under the password security section of the plan.
We did add language for multi-factor authentication. When possible, the district will utilize single sign-on and multi-factor authentication to maintain optimal account security controls. We have an upcoming PD day on October 6th, and my team is going to be divided between the schools, and we are going to be handing out some of those YubiKeys, those security tokens that we were able to obtain for our staff to help with that.
One of the sections we did omit in this password security is and this was not this iteration before we presented in June, we had removed the section that spelled out the algorithm for the password. Felt like there's absolutely no need to put the playbook in writing. But I did want to assure you, and I know Mr. Elliott mentioned some concerns about password requirements. I personally have seen the algorithm and the list, and I will say that it is complex and strong for student accounts. That may not have been the case 3 years ago. However, today they are long and they are unique and they are multi-digits and they're strong passwords. So having said that, we're not putting that detail in the data governance plan. We did roll out multi-factor authentication with our H team and people who have access to our financial systems and other levels of data sensitivity last year. Rolling out MFA to the staff is phase 2. And we have yet to determine if we'll roll out MFA to all students. That's a lot to ask since they don't have personal devices to authenticate with. But like Joe had said earlier, the student accounts have very limited access beyond tabs in Chrome.
When we say MFA for teachers, would that just be when accessing their personal laptops, or is it just when they're getting into PowerSchool or something like that?
Right now, we're going to be starting with their Google accounts, and a lot of the other systems use single sign-on through that Google, which would originate from their MFA. And we'll be using the Google MFA app on the phones, and also for people that don't want to tie in their personal devices with their work accounts, we'll have those security tokens.
Great.
So moving on, the next section is page 21 about training. We did put some language in here around the district will utilize professional learning days to offer training that grow the staff's skill set and knowledge of data security. Joe has mentioned a few times, October 6th will be our first kind of training for this year. Last year, he did do a campaign on using KnowBe4, which is kind of a test of our users and try to get a gauge of the knowledge base of our users and what they will and won't do in I guess we'll call it a campaign.
It is a campaign, yeah.
A campaign environment. So that will help us determine on October 6th, we'll know more about the future needs of our staff and what more trainings we'll do with the rest of our PD days.
Joe, what about the training? I know for the last 3 companies I've worked for, part of the training is actually sending an email that says, hey, I'm Bob Thompson and I need you to send me such and such, to see how many people we capture and get a stat on that. Are we doing anything like that here?
What she mentioned with KnowBe4, we do have a phishing campaign that does that, keeps statistics, and also allows training involved in that. We have not rolled out the training piece yet, but that is coming this year.
Okay, because I know that's worked for us because that's, if we dip below a certain score based on consultants, based on, cybersecurity consultants, they say, this is the type of training you should be providing and targeting that. Are we doing the same thing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we did the first campaign last year, so we do have some data on our staff.
Okay.
And we have a sense of what their training needs are.
Thank you.
Page 46, Appendix K is on data access roles and permissions. In this section, we took liberty with removing all of the security groups. So each one of these headings, the student information systems, the financial systems, Nessus, which is our special ed system, Health, SNAP, and food systems, they all had security roles spelled out in the data governance plan. And per the cybersecurity audit, it was recommended that we do not reveal those security groups. Is there anything else you want to say? Page 48, Appendix L, talks about password security in a little bit more detail. So on this document, the algorithm's no longer visible. But we do have robust algorithms that exist, and they are changed yearly.
It's every 6 months for staff, and it's yearly for students. And the student and staff password security follow the NIST framework.
We also utilize QR codes for our youngest students because they're still learning letters and numbers and the reversals. You can imagine trying to have a class of kindergartners log in fall. Tara will tell you it can take 25 minutes. So we batch QR codes that are tied to Clever. Those only work on particular configured devices, and they have very limited access. They only get you to the Clever dashboard.
They also act as a security token, and the passwords are not in the QR codes themselves.
On page 53, we have.
Just a quick question about the password.
Yep.
So you said it's 1 year for students, 6 months for staff. When do we implement that?
We implemented a security policy, and I think we started it in October, and then it's just every 6 months. Depending, it will recycle. If I have to change someone's password, then that would change the cycle for that user.
Okay, makes sense.
One of the things on page 53, there's another bullet under the notification heading. It's the very last bullet. It says conduct tabletop exercises and training twice a year to identify gaps in the incident response process. So that was a verbal recommendation of the CISA team for us to conduct these tabletop exercises. So, go ahead.
And they basically want you to think of it like a fire drill. We have fire drills to understand the procedures and to practice. And it's just like that, only for cybersecurity events.
And that concludes the majority of the bigger edits. There's a bunch of, I think there were probably 35 minor edits with spacing and links and appendix, hyperlinks and things like that. But those cover the bigger topics.
All right. Now, the cybersecurity audit that we had, they went through the data governance plan also, Joe, or no?
We did review it, yes.
Okay. And then I guess anything that you can't speak to right now that they found, we can talk to in the non-public.
Yes.
All right. Is there anything major that they found that deficiencies in this plan?
The biggest thing was just that it was publicly accessible for anyone to look at.
Okay.
I think it's important for us to note that the RSA, which we've spent quite a bit of time really digging into, it's listed on page 8. It's RSA 18966.
Yeah.
Really only requires us to produce a list of vetted software. That is the limit. So having, of course, years ago, the NHCTO came out with this template, and we've been working within this template, making edits, making it our own. But as we learn more about cybersecurity, it's becoming clearer and clearer that this plan needs to be smaller and smaller and smaller. We're making edits to follow those recommendations while still being as transparent as we can without compromising some of the information. We can make changes, absolutely. The plan, the way the RSA reads, we have to reaffirm it annually. But that word reaffirm is an interesting choice. So yes, we can make changes as we need to.
And you work with a collaborative, and this is still in keeping with what their best practices are and what most people are using?
You know, that's a very interesting point. Joe is participating more and more in NHCTO meetings, and I do think that he will be presenting at NHCTO some of the major changes we've made. I think we are actually ahead of many of the districts in this area of data governance, you know. And I wanted to say, in part, thank you for, we do have a group that meets regularly. We have had several community members participate. Mr. Elliott participated with us up until, I would say, around the spring last year. So we need and utilize those people's expertise to help us refine these plans.
And I do think there's going to be a balance between password security for students and the ability for the students to be able to log in on a regular basis. We had a district-wide reset at our district, and we had over 200 students that then had to re-get their passwords reset to get ready for iReady testing, which again just eats up into a matter of time. And if them getting hacked is limited to a very small area, then it's not quite as concerning to me, even though I do not want their accounts to be hacked either.
Anything? So I think my only piece I'd add on to that is, so yesterday at work, I was with our ISO and talked to him about this. And the only recommendation he really made is don't let this be like a 1-year thing. So the only thing I'd recommend is because of the so many changes happening, that we should be looking at this probably every 6 months because of cybersecurity, because of anything and everything we're learning as we go. So that's my only recommendation. I do think it should come to the board more often.
Absolutely, we can do that. And I think after every one of our, either the audit or the tabletop, every time we have a training and an event, we learn more about our internal areas of growth. We inevitably go back to this plan and make changes. So yeah, every 6 months is fine with us.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good cycle. Just if we think about coming back in March, when we talk about budget, what's being incorporated for the budget, what's going to be changing in this, I think that's a good time to come back and see what changes, see what we're doing, see what we've learned, see what we applied. So, my own thought. Anyone else?
Beyond that, and kind of along the same line, you talked about the phishing emails that your company does. Mine does the same, and I would argue or support doing that year round, not just as a baseline, but those threats don't go away. And it's great that you have it as sort of the baseline of where people are at, and you can utilize that during training. But again, those threats don't go away, and we need to stay on our toes all the time. So that, if we can generate those year round and have it be a learning opportunity throughout the year, I think we'll be in a better spot.
We can definitely do that.
At this point, I feel like, given that it is iterative and it can change over time, I feel comfortable with moving forward. So I'd like to make a motion to accept the data governance plan.
All right, got a motion from Dr. Hebner.
Second
from Mr. Paris. Any more questions, comments? I think as long as we're approving with that it'll be coming back in 6 months, and that makes sense.
Yep, I support that.
All right, all approved? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
All right. So next we're going to move on to the HCS addition plan. Mr. Thompson, you want to kick this off first?
Sure. So, we continue to plan for the upcoming voting in the spring, where we, we'll put forward the plan for the 6 additional classrooms. So we've been, busy trying to gather information, more detailed information from the architect and from our project manager. Most recently, Mr. Dowd updated the HCS website to reflect the initiative that the board is planning to put forward. And we thought it might be a good opportunity for Mr. Dowd to kind of walk the community through what we've started. And I think it's important to note it's a start because, as we know, the further we go into the school year, the more detailed information that will be coming to us, and we'll make sure that we provide real-time updates through our website. So do you want to?
Is getting the projector on now right behind you. So we'll bring up the website, take a walk through that, and then speak a little bit about funding. I'm going to ask the board to think a little bit about how this plan should be projected out there and what involvement the building committee should have in helping to develop how we're going to present this to the community as well. thought. I think Joe is bringing up probably the website right now as we speak. And if you go to the district website or the Hempstead Central School website, there is a button on each website right at the home page that will say HCS Edition. That will bring you directly to our site. Here we are. And there he goes, right to HCS Edition. This site is incorporated into our new platform as well. And so we have some basic information. And Joe, if you want to open up some of the accordion boxes. And I think that we as a group can articulate some of the needs that we have and how this addition will solve those together. So we have the main addition, the 4 classroom plan, which has been presented to the board before. I've annotated it to show some of the newer features, what's missing. For example, the undersized stairwell would be gone in the proposed addition. The upstairs and upstairs and bottom floor on each addition. So you'll see the 4 classroom addition. We've got on the left, you've got the ground floor. On the right, you have the second floor. Top of the screen, right in the middle of each image, is the new stairwell, along with the image on the left showing an exit to the rear, really the playground area, the access road playground area. And Joe, if you wanted to go to the second slide. So this is the 2 classroom addition. This one's a little bit more tricky to visualize, but this is between the 40s wing and the 60s wing. And there is what we can call it a cove, where these classrooms are being proposed. There's currently a storage space there that would be removed, and the classroom would have a first floor and a second floor to mix in with the existing 40s and 60s wing, although it's a transition area. That's that, and project costs are at the bottom. So we're working with a total of 6 classrooms for a current estimate of $4,555,000. We are expecting to have that price better articulated by late November 2023. In the meantime, we're working with the architects to refine the plans and review pricing options with them as they become available. So, Joe, I also have a slide out there, if you wouldn't mind showing, which I shared, involving costs and price and that sort of thing. So Joe's going to bring that up in just a second. We're looking at a total project cost of $4,555,000, and we'll have, pending the results of our October 10th meeting, special meeting, potential for an additional $273,000 in our capital reserve, which, as you see, it will be close to $2 million that we'll have in capital reserve, which still leaves $2.5 million. Yep. So you can see there's our capital reserve. Current balance, if you will, is $1,721,494. We're looking at additional funding on that 1010 special meeting of $273,888 to bring our total capital reserve to just under $2 million at $1,995,382. And Joe, if you wouldn't mind advancing, you'll see that with a total project cost of $4,555,000. The potential offset from capital reserve of $1,995,382. We're looking to identify funding of $2,559,000 potentially. I think that there's definitely an option to do what we did this year, which was to put an amount from our surplus into this project as an offset. I think we have to be certain as to what that amount is, because if we don't get that amount, then the funding may not work out. And so that's going to be one of the trickier aspects of it. A component of it may be able to be built into the budget if we can find some room. I don't know exactly what the priorities of the board are, and we can discuss that as we go through the budget process to try and get that number in an attainable way.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the board has any thoughts.
I think, Joe, would you mind bringing back the drawing back to the website?
Just a question, and you're probably not going to know this off the top of your head. For every $1 million we need to raise, do you know how much that would raise how much that would cost for $100,000 worth of property taxes?
I would have, not off the top of my head.
Okay.
So I think for me, I mean, the first thing, we talk about why we need this, the space. We look at it right now, every grade, just, I think we've had to vote on exceeding our policy for students in the classroom. Is it 2 grades right now, or are we at 3 grades right now? 2, okay. And every year we're exceeding the policy, exceeding how many kids are in the classrooms. Some grades are up to 22, 23, 24 kids in a classroom. And we talk about being competitive with other districts. Other districts, if you look at, there's charter school down the road, they've got 16, 17 kids per classroom. You've got towns next to us that have 17, 18 kids per classroom. And we have 8 to 9 kids more per classroom. It's hard to be competitive with these districts if those teachers are able to give more one-on-one experience. We also talk about special education. I mean, if you go down, Joe, if you mind scrolling down. So right now, the special education rooms that we have are smaller than most. If anybody who takes a walk through the central school, they'll see we still utilize the closets downstairs. Where, I think this year we lost another special education space because we needed to make room for a 2nd grade, a 5th second grade. So we're losing more and more space. We've already lost half a library. And these are reasons why we need these 6 classrooms. Even when they challenged Mr. Hansen over, we talked about over the last month or so, what are we going to use these 6 classrooms for? We want to designate exactly what we're using these for. There are teams that are saying, well, we could use more special ed space. We could have capabilities there for those spaces that we don't have right now. So there's a need there for sure. And then again, if anybody tours the library's 1/8, 1/2, 1/4, whatever of this room here, much smaller than any other district's libraries. Talk about being competitive, talk about being, giving students chances, and that's where it starts. Come up here to play catch up. So these are just some reasons why we need these classrooms.
Yeah, and I would just like to add too that there's something you're not seeing tonight, and that is a map with the 6 classrooms and how we will utilize that space. And, Chairman Smith had tasked me with producing that, and I told him, we need a little bit more time. The reason we need time is there are so many priorities that need to be addressed with these 6 classrooms. They're absolutely necessary. So Dr. Cheney and I, when we met today, have a draft of what we're thinking. But we need to talk that out because we have storage space issues that we need to talk about. We have a teacher prep room we need to talk about. Ventures, Title I, which supports struggling reading and math students, where those students will go. Reading services through special education intervention, learning center spaces. Our brand new technology teachers doing an amazing job. That's to travel from class to class to class. We talked about the library as well, expanding the library. So it's wonderful that we're having the conversation about 6 classrooms, but right now we're still working through what the priority will be, because even with the 6, we're not going to be able to meet every single priority. And so that's the challenge of producing the map. And we will have it for the next board meeting. But this is a great remedy for most of the issues that we have, but doesn't solve everything. And one of the things that concerns me this year too is even looking at some of the instruction as I'm seeing in the hallway. So if you walk through the central school, you'll see 2 desks out in the hallway, and it's a teacher working with a student individually or in small groups because there's no other space to use. And then lastly, the only other thing I'd like to add is I had a staff member ask me, last year there were these 3 priorities around student learning, security, and special ed. Are those still the themes? They absolutely are. Those are still the themes because with the 6th edition and addressing the small staircase, we are still supporting those 3 themes. Not to the extent that ultimately we'd like to. We still, at some point, will need to have a conversation about what we're doing with the main office. We have a temporary solution right now. It seems to be working out pretty well, but it is a temporary solution, and it does not begin to solve all of the security problems that we have. But these 6 classrooms is going to set us on the right path.
Right. That's why I think that if anybody doubts it, I would challenge them. Go see if the struggle is real during the day. Go there at 11 o'clock in the morning, go there at 1 in the afternoon, and see that, downstairs, special ed, they have all their equipment out in the hallway because they can't fit all the equipment in the room with the students that are there. So there's things that you see when you walk through there, not in an empty school. You see an empty school, you're like, oh, there's a lot of space here. But if you actually walk through there during the day when you have all 470 kids, it's a little bit different. So, all right. I think the one thing I'd like to talk about here, and board members, we've talked about this a bit, is the funding. Because as we come into October's budget season, so we want to talk about what do we need to budget, how are we going to pay for this? Joe, you mind bringing back to the numbers? If we go to the next one down, is it this one? Yeah. So we've got just under $2 million that we have now. We have to come up with, where's that 2.5 million? I think, as we've done in the past, whatever's, and I'm gonna say whatever, but we come up with that number that's in the existing budget that we use, because that's already been allocated. This past year, we took $1 million out of that budget, and that's how we got it up to, now the 1.7. My suggestion is we got to talk about what of the existing budget we want to, bring to the voters to put in capital reserve. If we look at, and I know you don't have the numbers right now, Jeff, we didn't ask you to bring these tonight, but, on average over the last few years, we've underrun the budget by 5 to 8%. Is that a safe?
Could be. Yeah. Yeah, that's very fair. I believe. Yeah. Just thinking back on all of them. Yeah.
Right. So if we think about that, that's anywhere from 1.9 to 2.3, $2.4 million, and you typically send most of that back. So it brings down the taxes. One suggestion is, where do we want to be this year to get close to that $2.5 million, instead of going back to the voters and asking for $1.5 million like what was done with the fire department or the police station in the past? Can we bring that number down even more? That would be allocated for the next budget. So just a few things to think about and looking for feedback, and as we go into budget season, things to consider. We don't have to make a vote tonight, of course, but it's more like we are talking about what we want to do in the budget next year. So we should have an open discussion right now, and then solicit feedback from the public. Where do we want to be? I'll stop rambling now.
Yeah, I don't have any immediate thoughts on it, but I'm, certainly open to the discussion.
Anything?
No set thoughts yet, no set numbers yet, but definitely thinking along the lines of where we were this year at a minimum. Putting away that $1 million after the surplus, after the first part, and putting $1 million in to start. I don't think we should do anything less than that, and then that takes $1 million off of this, and then we're looking at 1.5. But that, again, something to digest and talk about over the next few weeks.
Dr.
Yeah. Now, we previously approved that we can keep 1 million up to 1 million.
We can vote as a board anything in the current budget, but we want to bring forward to a warrant for the public to vote on how much to carry over into a capital reserve fund. We set $1 million last year because that's where we wanted to set. We wanted to do 900,000. We want to do 1.1. We can set that.
Yeah. So we could put whatever amount we need in order to effectively to put in the capital reserve to be able to build the addition.
We can put whatever we don't spend in the current budget.
Yeah.
We can put onto a warrant to have voted on to allocate to capital reserve.
But we need to get to the 4.5 total.
What's that?
We need to get the 4.5 total in order to do the addition.
Well, right now we need to get the 2.5.
Yeah.
We have, again, 1.7-ish, and we have the vote on 1010 to allocate another $270,000. But then I mean, I think the other thing that, we need to be cognizant of, and, we're going to talk about that, I think, very next. When we get into the budgets, we need to be very, surgical on what we're going to allocate and what we're going to increase or decrease from last year's budget in general. I think that we need to keep a close eye on everything as we usually do. And, really look at, are we going to buy more textbooks? Are we going to do this when we have something like this that's looming that needs to be done? So,
do we know what the amount is to possibly get state funding from the state building fund?
Typically, we qualify for a 30% reimbursement.
Okay.
But there's a whole process.
typically what? Sorry.
30%.
Right.
So we typically have a 30% offset. We're going to be attending tomorrow an update from that department on some of the new legislation and how that's impacting them and what it's going to look like going forward, which may be helpful and informative in the event that we can get this in. We've talked about some approaches on the current project and try and get that worked into their funding plan.
But we wouldn't know until after we have to get it approved before we know whether we're going to get it or not.
Yes. No.
No. So we might know beforehand.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Obviously, we can't use it until the project approved.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
But you are confirming that we are submitting for this coming year's review from the Department of Education, correct?
We had talked about submitting a request for reconsideration of our application in light of.
Right. So what's preventing us from submitting that?
We're going to, time, first of all, but second of all, we have to talk tomorrow with the DOE to see, before doing so, they have we're on a current biennium process.
Right.
And they're moving that to an annual process as of next year. So I'm really looking to get a comprehensive update on their changes and how they're implementing them in order to see if we can find a way to get this considered for funding.
Right. So for those at home that, again, this is stuff we've talked about in the past, State of New Hampshire has allocated $50 million every 2 years for reimbursement in any type of school renovation addition projects. We submitted ours last year for the project from last year. We were number 8 on the list for reimbursement. So we felt that it was not a good chance because the schools above us would have taken most of that, if not all of that money from the state. So at 8th place, we might as well have been last place. However, had we passed last year, the 7 schools in front of us didn't pass. So we would have, there was one, sorry. Oh, I did not know that. Okay. So there's one school ahead of us that passed. So we would have been the second one and we would have got reimbursement had we passed it, a 30% reimbursement from the state. So that's why it's important that we go again to put in for reimbursement because unlike in the years past, as long as we don't go for a bond, we're going 50% majority vote. And that's a better chance to get funding reimbursements as long as what you learn tomorrow and then we start filling out the paperwork.
That would be around $1.3 million. So
what's that?
It would be around $1.3 million if it's 30%, which would put us really close.
Yep.
And I think the X factor for us, and again, we'll have these conversations with the Department of Ed tomorrow, is the projects that we are proposing so substantive a change that we need to have an entirely new application, or is this simply a modification? Like, we haven't gotten full clarity on that piece, because if you look at the project, if they rescore us on the rubric, we're going to lose many of our points because of we're not building the main office. That safety piece was a very big part of why we scored 8. So the question is whether or not this is an entirely new project or if this is just a minor modification. And we should have further clarity on that tomorrow.
And what's the deadline for submission? Do we know?
There is no submission this year. This isn't a year.
Oh, that's why it's important for us to be able to amend the current plan.
Nice. But as I said, one of the things that they've changed is going from sort of this biennium to an annual application process. So I really want to work a little bit of their details to see how they're going to be translating that annual award. Is it going to be happening this year? Are we going to be able to, can we basically submit an application or reapply instead of having this re-ranked, which might be the better option?
Right.
So,
All right. So again, no vote tonight, but if I summarize this, I think that there's like 4 different things that we as a board working with the administration need to do. One is we're looking to drive down the price tag. So right now it's 4.55 million. We still have not done the risk opportunities with the building team. We have not looked at, scrutinizing the lines of the cost to see if we can replace it with additional, change materials, something. So we still have to bring down that price tag. That's a goal that we have for October. That, in a final rolled up cost from Trident would be, I believe, Jeff, it was the end of November through the next, we're going to be doing a month and a half, 2 months worth of discussions, negotiations, et cetera. Second one is we need to figure out how to allocate the budget from this year into a warrant article versus what do we want to request in next year's budget. So those will be discussions in October that we have to have. 3 is we needed to scrutinize our budget needs in general, because if we're going to be going asking for $1 million, $1.5 million, whatever that is, we have to see about, is there anything in the budget that we're going to be really scrutinizing to push off for another time. And then lastly, work on state reimbursement. Put that all into a nice little bag, and hopefully we're going to be spending a lot less money than the 4.55, but that's our target right now.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense, everyone?
Sure does.
Good. All right. Unless there's any other, we'll move on to budget process.
All right, contained in the board packet is the 2024-2025 budget development for the Hempstead school districts. It's the process that we will follow between now through December and then through voting in March. The board saw a draft of this a few meetings ago, so this is sort of the final process that we'll follow. So again, the process is well underway. And I think I said this at the previous meeting, it's sort of always underway, right? We're always having conversations about future need and identifying what our priorities are. But as we speak, our principals and our directors are developing and inputting their requests for the 24-25 school year into our software. And so they're having conversations at the building level and department level about what the needs are. And, again, utilizing that zero-based budgeting model where every year the budget is sort of built from the ground up. So we identify what we believe the needs are. It's a very time-consuming process. And it involves us going and getting pricing for what we believe the prices will be come next July. So it's a time-intensive process, but it's one that yields a great deal of accuracy in the overall budget. From there, what will happen is we have scheduled times with our building administrators and our directors, Jeff and I, to scrutinize those needs. We'll go line by line. We'll do a breakdown of that line for each item within that line. And I think, year one, when we kind of rolled this out, it seemed like it was a pretty daunting process. But now I think our administrators, I just got a thumbs up from Tara Lynn saying, we're ready, right? So, yeah. So it has become part of sort of operational practice now. Oh, okay. All right. So, traditionally there has been, and I'm not going to go through the whole schedule. I'll certainly answer questions. In previous years, October 3rd, there's been a budget work session. It is often canceled. I would advocate that we cancel that just because we need the time to be able to go through, review the information, so that when we do have the first budget workshop on the 17th with the board and the administrators, you have all of the information that you need. And again, our priority is, for us to, we're committed to continuous improvement. So we want to make sure that the budget that we put forward prioritizes the needs of students and helps to improve the academic program. There's lots of competing commitments. There are needs, there are wants. And so right now there's a lot of really good conversation going on about what that budget will look like. And we will present that budget to the board and have a lot of really good conversations.
Yeah, that's good. I think I would just draw, public's eye to October 17th. That is open to the public. That will be here at the middle school library. We've had a few members of the public join in the past. I think it's very valuable. I'll even throw it out there because right now I don't officially have my time allocated to anyone because for somehow I picked the short or the big straw, and I'm not allocated to one of the budget reviews. So if members of the public want to come, I certainly can sit with them and walk them through what we're doing and give them highlights and go and walk them around kind of a merry-go-round to everybody. So I think it'd be worthwhile to get more information out there for the public that they can come here and see the process that we go through the budget. So again, on October 17th from 7 to 9 p.m. at the library, open to the public to come and watch and listen. Certainly, I think we can even allocate maybe some question time for anyone, which we traditionally haven't done in the past, but I think it's valuable. So if anybody has questions about how we allocate the budget, how we scrutinize it, what are the things we're talking about, and can ask questions, definitely open to that. I know I talked to a member of the select board today, and they will be here most likely to see what we're doing and report that back at their board meeting. So,
and I'd just say we welcome the opportunity. If anyone in the public, don't wait until the 17th. If you want, to really deep dive into our budget in terms of every expenditure, whatever it might be. First of all, you're going to find last year's information on the website. And obviously, as the budget process unfolds, we will update the website to include. But we're always open to conversation so you can see how every nickel of taxpayer dollars is being spent as prudently as possible.
Right. Joe, I don't know if you can do it quickly. If not, don't worry about it. But could you show on the website where they would find anything related to budget? If you can't, we can always do it for the next meeting. And I'll kind of put you on the spot. But again, I think it's important to note, started this process 2 years ago that everything we review, every line and every dollar is shown on the website. It's published there, updated at every round. So it's important to continue to get that out there. So if anyone questions what we're spending our money on, it's all on display for public view.
And also use this as an opportunity while they're trying to find it to highlight the new superintendent welcome page on the website. It's a new addition, and we're going to take all of the communications that I send out, every other week, and we'll put them there. This was feedback that we got from parents, just about one central location for communication for building principals and for the superintendent. So that principal's welcome page. We'll have a link there that will have all of the communications that get sent out to parents.
Perfect. Want to do it for the next meeting, Joe, or? All right, departments under business office. All right, so this is all the information from last year, which will be essentially repeated this coming year for what will go to warrant in 2024. So again, everything's here from every session that we review, every meeting, every link, every budget, every piece of paper, everything that is collected and broadcasted.
And I think for people who like data and really want to take a deep dive, Joe, can you scroll down a little bit? a really good place to look is those budget reports. So Mr. Dowd presents them in a couple different ways. You can look by object code, default budget report, revenue budget. So there's a couple of different ways for people who really love numbers to be able to dive in to the budget. That's a good place to go. And then some of these other presentations are a little bit more of a global 20,000 aerial foot view of the budget. So, and if there's information that you think is not here, let us know, because we can provide that information and we can even look to put it on the website too.
Perfect.
Also important that school board discussion and review of the budget is also linked up there as well. So if there's any question on what the school board or why we're undertaking a certain priority, those links are there as well on YouTube along with the timestamp. So.
And I'm also going to make a plug for the grants page that Nicole developed, where it has all of our federal grants. It kind of breaks down what the money is used for, whether we talk about like Title I, Title II, Title IV. That grants page breaks down what those funds are used for. And this is always my plug, because this is a requirement from the Department of Education. If parents have any input on how we should be utilizing those title funds, we are more than receptive to hearing input from parents. So yeah, here it is on the screen. Because
we scroll back up real quick. I just want to.
Yep.
Okay. So far this year, we've got 405,000. That's what that's saying for this school year. Right. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, one of the next items on our agenda has already been updated on here, which is Robotics for Education grant. And then Mr. Dion mentioned the cybersecurity grant for the UB keys. UB? Yeah. Yeah. The $12,000. So this was literally updated in the last couple of days. So we've taken in $400,000 of grant funding for this school year.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Any more discussion on the budget process? As we know, it's the busy time between now and March. Talk about pretty much every board meeting. All right. Next up is the HCS robotics grant update. And this is with Ms. Tomaselli and Ms. McLaughlin.
Okay, so we're very excited to have our new technology integrator from the Central School here tonight. She's been patiently waiting for her agenda item. So this is Ms. Tara McLaughlin, and I'll let her start I'll just give you a little background that Tara was hired in late spring from another local district. We feel very fortunate to continue to recruit amazing rock stars into the Hsd School District. One of the first things she said to Bob and myself was, there's this robotics grant that's available. Can we get it? So it is a competitive grant from the New Hampshire Department of Ed, which means that schools that are in need are highly likely to receive those funds. So the fact that we were awarded a competitive grant speaks volumes to the quality of our application. But I'll let Tara tell you a little bit about what she's planning to do.
Hi, thank you all for having me here. To start this off, I am blown away by the support from the SAU all the way down to building administration, parents, school board. That was one of my first things, like my first few days. Superintendent Thompson was out at recess duty with me, and just to see that support coming from the top down, it really reaffirms to me that I made the right choice, and I feel like I'm finally finding my school home. So I thank you all for your support and having me here tonight. So the New Hampshire Robotics for Education grant, it was something that was presented to me. Dr. Cheney had reached out to me in the summer, and I had attended the webinar, and it was just this phenomenal program through a partnership we are having with Coder Z. It is a local robotics company based out of Derry, New Hampshire. So what's great is that we are partnering with someone very local. So if we should have some troubleshooting issues, it's not like I have to reach somebody at the other end, of the country. It's somebody that's the next town over, which is wonderful. So the grant itself is a 2-year grant. So it will be for the 23-24 school year and for the 24-25 school year. I'm sorry. It is $7,500 for this school year and $7,500 for next school year. And then there is a partner match through Coder Z for $12,400. So for the next 2 years, we're looking at roughly $27,400 in robotics grant through the state of New Hampshire, which is wonderful. So my plan is that grant covers the Hsd program, and they are a wonderful program. So their entire platform is through gamification. So they try and really hook these kiddos in with using things that they're familiar with. And at the elementary level, I was really excited to bring this to them because, I know that there's a phenomenal robotics program here at the middle school. And we are so fortunate to have Mrs. Wisecarver with our Ventures program, but I really wanted to target robotics and coding with our elementary students. So it is Lego based. So their entire platform is Legos. And as soon as I heard that, and I had kind of told some of our 3rd and 4th grade students, as soon as they heard Legos, their eyes went big and their fingers were crossed that we would get this program. And I was actually in a 4th grade classroom while I was getting ready to teach when I got the email that we had received the grant. And Dr. Cheney had walked in and she's like, I don't know if you heard. I'm like, they already know we got the grant. So the kids were just thrilled. So our plan is with this grant is to utilize the Hsd program for our youngest learners, which will, lead into the great, wonderful robotics exposure that they have here at the middle school. So they are coming in, they'll have some background knowledge with coding. And what's great about this program is it's all virtual. So you don't need I don't need necessarily, I'm a teacher. I'm not an engineer by any means. But what's great is I don't have to have significant robotics experience to be able to present this program to my students. So they provide numerous trainings for me. The grant provides, transportation. So there is a competition towards the end of the school year. So there is some digital competition. And then the final, if we were to make it to the final round, it is a physical competition. So we would have a robotics team of about 6 to 8 students. And the grant does provide transportation. It does provide the advisor fees. So it would be myself and likely another teacher who would coach this team with me in an enrichment setting after school or before school. And it also covers the curriculum for our students. And the program itself is about 25 hours of curriculum. So spread out over the course of this school year, it's going to be a really enriching and engaging experience for all of our learners. Sorry, I talked really fast.
So do you have any questions?
Nope. I don't have questions. I think it's amazing, first of all. Yesterday, what I was talking about when I was with our ISO, which is Information Security Officer, we actually had a half-day session about AI, machine learning, robotics, and automated engineering. So the fact that, they're seeing that there's a huge demand out there, not enough supply, meaning not enough people going into that industry. And they were just talking about how kids right now they're leaning on 16-year-olds in the industry now, 17-year-olds. They're not even looking for a college degree to do this. So it's really great that we get this into their hands at such a young age. So appreciate it.
To kind of go off of your point, part of a big point of my conversation with students lately has been these wonderful positions that have become careers that have become available. I say to them, if I'm in a 2nd grade classroom, we talk about how when I was in 2nd grade, I didn't get to go home and play, on an iPad or watch a movie on my iPad. I played outside. And if I wanted to watch TV, I had to wait until my sister was done watching her show so I could watch my show. So we just talk about how these great careers, think about Apple, the development of the iPhone, the iPad, all of these wonderful careers that have developed in the last, 20, 30 years, and how many more careers will develop over the next 20, 30 years to give our learners, these amazing opportunities. So I love that they're, like you had said, I love that they're getting exposure at the youngest of age. So by the time they get to the middle school and then over at Pinkerton, they'll have a really solid knowledge of coding and just a great technology background. So,
yeah. So no, it's really great. There's a lot of benefits in this. So.
And Tara just alluded to what I was going to say about building that vertical. When we talk about a vertical plan, we're looking at K through 8, and then where do they go beyond that? So Pinkerton has a great landing space for them in their CTE program. They have a robotics department. They also have some advanced options for networking and computing. You can go in that direction, as well as CAD work and tech ed. Here at the middle school, Mr. Remelard's class has a variety of tech ed options. We also have an after-school robotics club here, as well as a STEM adventures club for 5th and 6th graders. So this is just building that vertical capacity and it will be enrichment based. But we're very excited to be able to utilize and partner with Coder Z because they do have a K-12 curriculum. So we'll find ways to pull that into our school day curriculum for children as well.
It's awesome.
And if I could just add, so when Tara enthusiastically approached me about submitting for this grant, and this has been on our radar, but for one reason or another, we had not submitted a grant application. So Tara sends an email, a follow-up, and I said to Nicole, I'm like, let's talk tomorrow. I'm really concerned. The deadline is approaching very, very quickly, and then the next day when we talked, Nicole said, it's been submitted.
I can explain why we didn't apply it for last year.
Yeah, no, but I think that the point is,
we had a good reason.
Really what the point is that we have some tremendous educators in our school district. And we hired some really great people who are bring a lot of enthusiasm, energy, and new ideas. And here's one that evolved right from the start of the year that it wasn't just an idea, we were able to execute on it. So
that's good. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I just did want to note the Coder Z is a match. So I'm not sure if there's business we have to do around accepting the match funds. The $7,500 is a gift from the Department of Ed, and it falls into our grants management system. And so that grants page you saw, it only lists $7,500, but it does not list the matching $12,000.
Do we have to have a board vote on that, Jeff?
If you'd like, based on the amount. Are you sure on the amount that we're going to need to match?
$12,400 is the match amount over 2 years.
Okay, so that's the amount that
Mm-hmm.
That was from who again?
I'm sorry.
So the match was from?
Coder Z.
directly.
Right. So I'll make the motion to accept the matching funds from Coder Z for $12,400 over the next 2 years. Second. Any questions? All approved?
Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Actually goes kind of a good segue, and maybe Ms. McLaughlin, you want to stay just for a quick second, but goes into the board goals. The few things on this. One thing I had emailed out to the board is, I'd like for consideration to bring into a new board goal under technology, as this is something that what we just said, it's everywhere. You can't escape it. Technology is everywhere. And I think that we as a district, although we're doing some really good stuff, as we just heard, I think we can do more to prepare students from all the way from preschool all the way up with technology, and allow them, allow opportunities for students if that's the way they want to go. But no matter what, I don't care if what trade you're in, what profession you're in, you're going to use technology some way, somehow. And I think there's a lot of generations that don't see all the benefits of the technology that it's going to be there now, but what's going to be there in 10 years, 20 years. So I had written up and I sent this to the board members for consideration for a new goal under technology. I'll just read it out loud, and Melissa, if we agree to it, I would definitely send it to you so you don't have to worry about writing it down. We aim to create a learning environment that is conducive to collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and problem solving with the integration of technology in the classroom, promoting digital literacy by ensuring that technology is accessible to all students, regardless of their socioeconomic status or learning abilities. Ultimately, we believe that technology is a powerful tool for improving educational outcomes and preparing students for success in the 21st century workforce. So, any feedback, board members, thoughts on this?
I think what it really speaks to is, trying to incorporate into the curriculum, more technology and the tools that they use on a day-to-day basis. That's personally what I would like to see.
Yeah. I mean, for me, what it spoke to, and we've talked about it in the past, is like, I don't walk around work with a textbook. I don't walk around work with a 3-ring binder. I don't walk around work with a whole bunch of paper. I have this. Or I have my laptop for work. I talked to a friend of mine today that's in the trades. He goes to work with a small notepad or like a ThinkPad of sorts, and he's writing it all down there. It's all caught for him electronically, so he can go back later on and draw out what it is for, the diagram for the plumbing that he's doing. So those are the things that I think we need to invest more in and less into what we did 30 years ago, 40 years ago in teaching. So that's why I thought it was important to bring up something like this in our goals. And then back it with how we're going to budget, how we're going to fund it, how we're going to change what, in the curriculum and training materials, et cetera.
So one of the things you had talked about in that was the digital literacy piece. Do we have a class that we go over digital literacy, or is there a place that we normally go over digital literacy?
Yeah, so we have a technology class at the elementary school and at the middle school as well. And that is a key component of it. In fact, I was observing a lesson in Tara's class the first week of school on digital footprints. And it was very well done. And I'm going to let Mrs. Tomaselli maybe elaborate on that.
So there are standards for technology classes. They're called the Hsd NETs, the National Educational Technology Standards. And there's NETs for teachers, NETs for administrators, and NETs for students. And they reaffirm them and re-update them every 4 years or so, which inevitably is not fast enough because the technology evolves very quickly.
Right.
So one of the curriculum improvements we need to be making is to constantly be looking at those revised standards and incorporating them into our instruction. Having said that, both our tech teachers spend the first quarter of the year talking about digital literacy and digital citizenship. So they review things like the AUP, the acceptable use, all of our Google tools, and send kids off to the school year with like a confidence and skill set that they can use productively. But certainly AI is going to present some unique challenges for schools.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
And opportunities.
And opportunities.
You talked a lot about this, right?
It's true. And I do typically see things as opportunities. So the sentiment probably didn't come out right, but we are already looking at it as teams. And one of the interesting things is the state is also incorporating AI into some of our assessment work. So I think it's happening behind the scenes. It has been for a while, and people aren't even realizing that AI is embedded into so many of the tools we already are using. It's just having it out in front in an education setting is going to require us to think a little differently about how we approach, lessons and how do we be more creative with this.
And I also think too, like I do marvel at some of the technology that our teachers use. And I think I've given the example before. We have a teacher who has a sign on their door that says, come on in. And there's a QR code. And you take a picture of the QR code, and it takes you to this feedback form where you can go in, provide the teacher real-time feedback on their teaching through a Google form. It's a very impressive tool. And I think that's just like one example of 100. But to your point, David, there's always room for growth. Mm-hmm. And I think even looking at some of the issues around the backpack issue, right? What are kids carrying around in a backpack? And I know there's a lot of great conversations going on here at the middle school. Like, do they need that? Can they take notes on their laptop? Do they need to have, as many binders as they do? So there is work. I'm excited that the board is adding this as a goal, because I really do think that even as far as we've come, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And there always will be, right? Because the technology is always changing.
I also look at, I moved to this district 8.5 years ago, and I came from one of the top districts in New Hampshire. And I was reluctant to come over here. But after touring the school, one of the things that got me was there was a technology room. There were laptops, there was computers, there was everything for kids. First grade through fourth grade, I was ecstatic.
Yeah.
I think in the second year I was here, that classroom got taken away because they needed room to move and get another grade level in that room. And now our technology teacher is on a cart. Brings some, technology on a cart, takes 5 minutes to set up the room. 5 minutes before the class starts, starts taking things away. So kids are essentially losing that 10 minutes had they been, a technology room, a computer room, whatever you want to call it, but a dedicated space just on technology.
Yeah.
So we don't have that now for that school. we have more here, which is great, but those are the things to invest in technology when I think about it. So, I don't know, back to board members, thoughts on technology, any rewording thoughts? I know I talked to Erin. She was good with it. She was not allowed to, able to be here tonight. So.
Yeah, I'm good with it, especially AI is going to change everything so quickly. In our school, we use ChatGPT to translate things into foreign languages for EL students, change the reading level so you can change an article from 9th grade to 6th grade to third grade, depending on the kid. And it's crazy.
I'll speak to where yesterday when I was at this seminar by the consultants and actually by software we're looking at, it was you have a QR code on every piece of clothing in your wardrobe, and you pick a couple of things, and AI will tell you what matches, and it'll also suggest things to go buy. If you're looking to buy a new pair of shoes, it'll say, well, if you like this outfit, here's a pair of shoes that matches this. So these are things that companies are implementing, and they're doing that based off of knowledge and expertise of people building this.
So you're saying you're going to be better dressed in the future?
I'm saying that I won't be mismatched in the future because AI will help me dress myself. So the other one that I wanted to bring up, and we've talked about also, is reducing or condensing a few of these together, because some of these do overlap. I don't know, board members, if you've looked at any of these and have any suggestions. I know we've all agreed a few of these do, overlap a little bit or could, and it makes sense to condense, but any thoughts on these?
I mean, I feel like if the district feels comfortable with adding the technology goal, that what's already written there is not overwhelming, I don't think we need to necessarily make substantive changes in the other things that are there, at least for now. If we need to add another goal in the future, then yeah.
I would agree with that. These are all pretty, this makes a well-rounded set of goals. And if we can add technology, then it completes it for me.
Okay. Good. Okay. So, Melissa, do we typically vote on acceptance of the goals, or I forget, if you can help me out with this?
Yes, typically in the past, the board has accepted a set of goals, but that's usually when we have like a document to present to the board. So we could slate that for the next meeting, which I already have it for the October 10th meeting.
Perfect. All right. So I will email you the technology goal that we've agreed to, and we'll look at it next time. Thank you, Melissa. All right. Moving right along here. Next up is Mr. Dowd with the Wellness Committee.
Well, yes, thank you. The school board really dramatically updated its wellness policy, JLCF, in the spring. And we've had an opportunity to have a more robust district-wide wellness committee. We've had these committees more decentralized, more at the building level, but I think that we have some lofty goals. And I did want to put a call out there to see if there'd be any members from the board who might be interested in helping out with that effort. I'd be looking for community members, parents as well. So I don't know if we had anyone who might be interested, but we would meet with administration, presumably perhaps a board member, a parent, or a member of the community, or all of those in one, and district food service staff as well as building reps for that. So I just wanted to put a call out there and let you guys know that we're implementing that, and see maybe if Andy might be interested in helping out. I think he's already committed to that, so that's good.
Yeah, I would love to volunteer for that.
Oh, well, thank you. Some great ideas, I'm sure, to bring to the table. So
absolutely.
Yeah, so we've got that going on. That's some progress on the revised policy. So there'll be a call out there and a notice to parents if anyone's interested in joining that committee to let us know.
Okay. You putting that out in your communication? Okay. Thank you. All right. Anything else on that, Mr. Dowd?
That's it.
All right, board members. In front of you, you have policy, 6 policies for the first reading. Go through these. Most of these were more legal updates or things that were, I don't know if you want to state a little bit more to it, Mr. Dow, but we did have a meeting, I want to say it was last week now, right? If I'm thinking right, I think it was last week, and most of these were just updates that were, I'd say, legally bound by legislature. So we can go through these, but as you can see, there's notes on each one of them. Ask any questions as we go through these, but I'll give a quick overview. And if there's anything of substance, either from Melissa, Mr. Dowd, or Mr. Thompson, I want to add to this, we certainly can. We have the first one, which is DB, annual budget. Again, minor changes to this as described. We open it up. There's not too much to this. One thing that we did ask, and I did ask for this, board members looking for your input on this, is second paragraph, last sentence. Did ask that we add in this, that we add, the transparency piece, that we do look to add all information online within 7 days of any major meetings. So any of these budget meetings, any information will be posted within 7 days so that it is transparent. I thought it was good to not only say that we will do it, but also time bound it instead of just saying we'll do it as fast as we can. Well, that's subjective.
Right.
What's the measurement? Within 7 days, any of this material for budget would be put online. So
Is 7 days enough time?
I'll more than enough.
Okay.
Do we have to define what major benchmarks are? Is that just a procedure thing?
we went along with what's in this calendar as major milestones.
Sounds good to me.
Might look a little like what we have.
Yeah. I don't know the legalese, just making sure.
Yep. Next one is JFABD, admission of homeless students. Again, there are substantial changes as noted that reflect the McKinney-Vento Act. Again, for those at home, most of the language was around the removal of children, quote unquote, awaiting foster care from the definition of homeless and requirements regarding transportation of homeless students. The name of the policy will change to the education of homeless children and unaccompanied youth. So again, there is a lot that was changed here. As you can see, you wouldn't think that, impacts an influential town like Hempstead, but it does. Happens, I'd say, not just the onesie twosie year.
Do we have a school social worker or a district social worker?
We have a school district social worker, Julie Barbick.
Okay, right.
Right. So board members, we'll go to the next one, BIE, board member indemnification. Updates include exception of indemnification when board members violates his or her oath of office or otherwise acts outside of his or her authority. Also includes additional legal references. Unless there's any questions. Next one, JLCE, first aid and emergency medical care. Again, this was last revised in 2019. Amendments made with the assistance of the New Hampshire School Nurses Association include removal of redundancies, conflicts with other policies, and language change to better reflect statutory or regulatory provisions. There's a slight name change on this. I think one that, for those that don't remember from last year, we did authorize that we would have Narcan and opioid antagonists on site. So this also adds language that the board authorizes that to be here on premise. I'm going to say that's an example of thanks to teachers and community members that were asking that we do that because of the growing pandemic that has been here for many years. EBBC, first aid and emergency medical care. Again, recommended to repeal the duplicate policy and refer only to JLCE for the subject matter. So, again, that was just a repealing of this. So essentially deleting it. And then lastly, EBBD, indoor air quality. No revisions since it was adopted in 2010. Changes include revised policy to add section 2 on water quality and access reflective of HB 1421, which seeks to limit exposure to lead in drinking water and requires schools to install compliant water bottle filling stations or to test and remediate all water outlets in the facility, plus changes to legal reference and name change to add water quality to the title. So, pretty straightforward. I don't know anything in addition to that, Mr. Thompson, Jenny Dees.
No, just again, I said it before, but really appreciate the efficiency the board has with updating policies. There's 6 tonight alone, and I would make the case that there are some boards that might do 6 in a year, and you do that in one night. And the number of policies that the board updated last year was pretty significant. And obviously we'll continue to do that. There is a goal of being on a 3-year cycle for policy review for a variety of reasons. We've been off of that cycle, but slowly we're getting back there. And I just updated my list of policies that we need to look at with the fall policy review from New Hampshire School Boards Association. And I've added, there's 17 additional policies that we need to look at. So.
I look forward to the 3rd week in October. All right. Any questions on these policies?
Just have one question. So on the Narcan, on the opioid antagonists, so we've authorized the district to obtain, store, and administer these medications. But did we follow through with that? And have we obtained them, or is that confidential?
No, before you got on the board, we actually had a grant for this. And so we do have it on premise, and they do know how to
administer
it.
Okay, thanks.
Anything in addition to that, Mr. Thompson?
Yeah, we had a local community recovery network that donated probably like a few $1,000s worth of Narcan. And we also have it where we have our AED. So in the event of emergency, you go to where our AED is, there's Narcan stored in there. And Narcan is something that you could administer that's not going to cause any harmful side effects if somebody were to accidentally take it. It looks like it's a nasal spray. So,
thanks.
All right. Make a motion to move these to second reading.
Second.
All approved? All right. All right. Now we come to board comments, correspondence. Over to my left, Mr. Giard. All set? Yep. Okay. I'm all set as well. Mr. Gabaris?
In officially joining the wellness committee, just wanted to share with the public that I want to make it a priority to improve student nutrition and really kind of analyze what our kids are eating on a daily basis. So the wellness committee is a perfect platform to do that. So looking forward to sharing my ideas.
All right. Doctor? You all set? Okay. All right. I think that takes care of that. Now we'll move on to consent agenda. Mr. Thompson.
all right, under personnel report, I have one item. It is a resignation of a professional staff member, Marie Roy, who is a HMS Special Education Case Manager, looking to resign her position effective October 26, 2023.
I'll make the motion to accept the resignation of Ms. Roy, effective October 26, 2023.
Second.
Discussion? All right. Just want to thank Ms. Roy for everything she's done in the district, and we wish her well as she moves on to another district. All approved? Thank you. All right. Superintendent's report.
Yeah, so I think we'll start with Mrs. Tomaselli, who's going to give an update on iReady. I know Dr. Cheney provided some information, but there's some additional pieces that Nicole can report out on.
So our fall testing season has begun. We call this part the diagnostic. We use the information that we glean from these iReady tests throughout the first few months of school to kind of determine our student groupings in our tier 1 settings. We also determine who needs support in a more targeted way for tier 2 instruction. We also legally use them as part of our dyslexia screening process. There's a new dyslexia law in New Hampshire that requires us to screen and then triangulate data from multiple screeners for the first 4 years of schooling. So these tests are utilized in a variety of ways. We're also going to be mailing home the reports from the fall and winter and spring. Traditionally, we've only mailed home spring results, but we've gotten some feedback that parents really would like to see that data more regularly. So we're happy to do that. So at this point, we are about 2/3 of the way through our reading assessment, and math is just starting. So we have about 2 grades worth of math done, but we'll be testing for the next probably 2 weeks and then makeups. We are already underway with a new structure called data meetings at HMS that are happening weekly, where teams are getting together and looking at kiddos' results and making decisions for placement and for targeted group work. And at Central School, there's going to be a new structure called a Data Week that's happening mid-October. So after the testing periods are complete, we're going to have teams work for a little bit longer duration of time to really dive into that grade level data and look at trends. And this will be really helpful for a lot of different reasons. When we see grade level trends, we can really focus on what we need to shift instructionally, and then maybe even, design or develop ourselves or purchase to supplement in our curriculum.
Awesome.
You may have heard some feedback. There was a little bit of a hiccup with the iReady Chrome browser earlier this week. The iReady test required a newer version, and so we had to push out a Chrome update. For some classes, that was a little bit of an interruption, but that should be all smooth sailing for the rest of the week.
Thank you.
So as was indicated earlier, we have our first early release day tomorrow. That's a 1:15 dismissal at HMS and a 2 p.m. dismissal at the Central School. And this really affords our professional staff an opportunity to receive training in a variety of different topics. Tomorrow's topic is ALICE training. So for those of you who don't know, ALICE is a safety training. It's a program that the district has adopted. We're very fortunate that our school resource officer is actually a trained ALICE instructor. And ALICE is an acronym because there's no shortage of acronyms in public education. It stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, Evacuate. And the reason we've adopted this program is it was actually developed collaboratively by a married couple. One was a police officer and one was an educator. It's also important to note that ALICE is the approved method for Pinkerton Academy. So when our students do go to Pinkerton, they have the familiarity with the ALICE program. And then lastly, last week, Principal Milbury sent out a communication to parents about a cyberbullying incident. The incident did not take place here at school, but obviously any time a situation like that occurs outside of school, it does have implications for us here at school. And, I had somebody reach out to me to ask, is there a problem with bullying in the Hempstead School District? And the answer is yes. The Hempstead School District has a problem with bullying. And I say that because even if there is one kid in our school district that's being bullied, we have a problem with bullying. We are not afraid to tell people that. I really appreciate Principal Milbury's approach. This issue came up. Within a few short hours, she's communicating to families, hey, we have a problem. Here's some resources. I know she spent part of a day talking about bullying, visiting advisories, having conversations with staff. I know that there are a number of things that are in the works. We're talking about, we talked at the strategic plan deliverable presentation about parent engagement events. Well, we're talking about doing one on bullying, cyberbullying, internet safety. It is an issue, right? And I have had parents tell me, well, when things happen outside of school, what's the responsibility of the school to act? Well, I guess it depends on how you define act, right? Act is, it is our responsibility to make sure that we are caring for the kids in this community, especially when they're dealing with issues with their peers, because those things do spill into school. So it's about support. And the thing that was the most telling about the incident last week was that the day after Mrs. Milbury sent out her communication, I met with Mrs. Joseph, who had received multiple bullying reports the next day. That is not a bad thing. That tells us that the more we begin to communicate with parents, the more people are willing to come forward, because bullying is one of those things. Kids are smart. They use opportunities when there's no adult around to bully each other. And so we need to do a better job. There's some great systems that are in place in this school. There's the ABC Club, which is the anti-bullying club. There's the Sunshine Squad, which is a group of students who are really committed. We have, town hall meetings here. So I want the community to know, I want the board to know that this is something that we're going to talk a lot more about. And admittedly, we probably haven't talked about it enough. It is a problem. And we need to collectively look for solutions to the problem. We're committed to doing that.
Yeah, I would suggest, back, and I know I attended this when actually two of my children came through here, both of them, they first came into middle school, but it was offered by the middle school principal for a cyberbullying, just everything for parents.
Yeah.
And I'd say that was probably the most attended event without, plays or, things like that with kids. That was just adult focused. Probably 2, 3, 4 dozen adults attended that to learn what could they do to monitor, what can they do to help, what can they do to support. So I would definitely implore the district to do that, start that back up as soon as possible.
Yeah, and just want to be very clear with parents. If your child is being bullied, you need to reach out to the school and find that one person that you trust the most to have the conversation with, because we can sort of strategize like how we want to handle this, right? Because oftentimes there's this reluctancy, like, I don't want to make the problem worse. My child is begging me not to call the school. And I can tell you, doing nothing is not going to make the problem go away. So I would just welcome parents to reach out to whoever it is. It might be the principal, it could be the school counselor, it could be a teacher. Reach out and say, like, I want to discuss even a hypothetical with you, so we can kind of chart out how we might be able to address these, because we can do it head on and we can also do it very discreetly. But, the law really requires us to mitigate these situations in a way that feels good for the victim. So when a parent comes forward and says, like, I'm not okay with handling it this way, we're going to try to work with them to resolve the issue in the most delicate way that we can. So this topic will be one that we continue to visit.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your perspective, because it's never going to be something that goes away. It's just in the nature of how kids grow up. And it's always better to let an administrator know or somebody know, because they may already know about it and they may have a plan in place, but yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate the commitment of all of our building leadership in, trying to address this issue, bringing attention to it. That commitment is there and it's real.
All right. Anything else?
Well, that's it.
That's it for tonight.
That's it.
All right. Other business, old business, just to announce, I most likely will not be here the 10th or the 24th meeting. Not because I don't want to be here, but I have other, prior commitments and I'll be out of town. I'll try to be here on the 10th though, but if I'm not, so be it. I don't see us going into non-public for any reason unless anybody has, no. All right. So we'll adjourn a little bit later than we expected, but at 9:15 on September 26th. Thank you, everyone.